The Turkish military is claiming that it's taken over the government, even as the country's prime minister says that this is just an attempted coup and it will not succeed. We've heard reports of tanks opening fire in the country's largest city, in Istanbul, and military helicopters opening fire in the capital city of Ankara. Earlier, an announcer on Turkish state TV read a statement on the orders of the military. She said the country is now run by a, quote, peace council, which is going to ensure the safety, and that martial law is now in place. She also said that the military took power because the secular rule of law has been eroded by the current government. Well, the U.S. State Department weighing in, saying that U.S. citizens in Turkey, they need a shelter in place and they need to stay indoors. Turkish President Erdogan appeared earlier on Turkish television. Interesting how he appeared. He came via FaceTime, saying a minority faction within the military, they were responsible for the uprising. And then he encouraged the Turkish people, ignore the martial law, ignore the protests, the curfews on the streets, and come to the streets and protest. CBS News foreign correspondent Holly Williams is in Istanbul. Holly, what are you hearing on the ground? I can hear the sound from behind you.
Well, Rena, there is now total uncertainty here in Turkey. We do not know who's in control of the country, and that's extremely worrying because Turkey is a key US ally here in the Middle East, and it also has the second biggest military in NATO. Here in Istanbul, which is Turkey's biggest city, we have the military on the street with troops and tanks. They've blocked the city's two main bridges. You can see one of them behind me. They're at the airport. They seem to have taken over Turkish state television. Here in Istanbul and also in the capital, Ankara, we've repeatedly had military jets flying very low overhead, and we've also heard for a couple of hours now gunfire ringing out across the city. There are also reports in Ankara of helicopter gunfire as well as one or more explosions. Just a short while ago, we heard from the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, on Turkish television, as you said, in one instance appearing via cell phone. He condemned this coup and urged his supporters out onto the street, which is potentially explosive because it could provoke clashes with the military.
Holly, I want to ask you, why now? Why did the military decide to attempt this coup now?
We can't answer that. There's been no popular uprising. There haven't been big demonstrations on the street, for instance, here in Istanbul for around 3 years now. And the conventional wisdom here in Turkey for several years now has been that Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the current president, formerly the prime minister, by far the most powerful man in Turkey for over a decade now, the conventional wisdom was that he had successfully curbed the power of the military here in Turkey, because over the last 100 years or so, the military has repeatedly intervened with coups. It was thought, though, that he had successfully defanged them with a series of legal cases that had landed several top military figures in prison. Today's events, though, show that that was not true, though at this point we don't know whether this coup has been successful or not.
Any indication of how much support that President Erdogan has from the public and the people on the streets?
Well, we can't say for sure. What we can say is that Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his party have won election after election over the last 13 or 14 years. He himself is an extraordinarily controversial figure. He is loved, adored by his supporters, but his critics say that he has forced his own conservative Islamic ideas on this country. Many of those critics say that in Turkey they want a more Western-style liberal democracy, and they say that in forcing his own more conservative ideas on Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan has chipped away at their democratic freedoms.
Holly, when you think about military coup, one of the first things that come to my mind was a situation in Egypt. I think Mubarak, I think al-Sisi. Is this any sort of comparison to be made to Egypt?
Well, it's quite different, certainly in terms of Mubarak being deposed, because there haven't been people on the street here trying to get rid of Erdogan over the last 3 years. His critics loathe him, they despise him, but the last time we had a really big demonstration here in Istanbul or in the capital Ankara was 3 years ago. And since then, Erdogan's critics say that he has chipped away at their democratic freedoms, restricting their right to free speech, restricting their right to protest. So this is clearly very much a military-led coup. They weren't responding to a big groundswell of popular support. That said, there are many people in Turkey who very much dislike Recep Tayyip Erdogan and who may be on the side of the military coup.
Holly, I know the situation's unfolding, but is there any indication of how big this military coup, the people from the military establishment who are involved in it, is this a small handful of people? Is this large swath of the military establishment? I know the Prime Minister has called on people to return to their bases, the military folks. But do we know just how powerful and how many numbers are really behind this coup?
No, we don't. And we don't know who's leading it because, as I said before, the conventional wisdom was that Recep Tayyip Erdogan's enemies within the military had essentially been sidelined, if not put in prison. In terms of how many soldiers, how many officers are taking part, once again, we don't know. But it doesn't look small because they're everywhere in this city. They're on the two main bridges. They're at the airport. They were at Turkish state television. There are roadblocks on the street. We don't know if this attempted coup is going to succeed, but it certainly doesn't look as if it's small in size.
And there was a report of a man, it's known as a Gulen movement, a man in Pennsylvania who, I don't know if a fugitive is the right word, but was not once a close friend or an ally of the president, is my understanding, President Erdogan, and then they had a falling out. And his side, President Erdogan, is claiming that he could potentially be behind this movement. Who are the people of the Gulen movement, and what is that situation with them?
Well, the leader of the movement is Fethullah Gulen, who has lived in self-imposed exile in the US for many years. And as you said, originally backed Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Justice and Development Party when they came to power here in Turkey with an Islamist vision for this country, which has traditionally been more of a Western-style secular democracy. In recent years, though, Fethullah Gulen and his supporters have turned against Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And Erdogan has accused his former ally of all sorts of misdeeds. It's certainly not surprising that with this attempted coup ongoing, Erdogan or perhaps some of his supporters would once again blame the so-called Gulenists.
Holly Williams on the ground in Istanbul. Holly, thank you very much.